In my last video, I explained a possible scenario where the Galactic Empire found ancient texts containing the location of powerful Da'at Yichud technology on Earth. The Empire then finds out that Earth is ruled by a highly technological totalitarian regime very similar to theirs, and decides that a diplomatic solution would be the best course of action to get their hands on Da'at Yichud technology. Of course, that scenario is boring, as most of you want to know who would win if the Empire decided that conquering Wolfenstein's German Reich by force would be the course of action. In today's video, I will be explaining that, but before I do, let's go over the two regimes' military strengths one more time. While I did compare the military strengths of these two regimes in my last video, I will go into more detail in this one, starting off with the Empire's main infantry unit used for invasions, the Stormtrooper. The Stormtrooper is usually equipped with white plastoid armor designed to provide protection against blaster fire. Now, there's already a major downside with white body armor. It easily stands out in combat, making Stormtroopers easy targets. This could be easily fixed by introducing camouflage patterns or a darker set of armor. But since the Empire rarely uses camouflage, we'll have to consider that Stormtroopers are easily spottable in combat situations. There are multiple variations of the Stormtroopers, like the Scout Trooper, and other environmentally specialized ones. One of the most elite specializations are Death Troopers and Purge Troopers, but their specializations lie more in VIP protection and highly specialized missions, not in planetary invasions. So let's say that the Empire mainly uses conventional Stormtroopers for the bulk of its invasion force. Moving on to their small arms, Stormtroopers are armed with a standard-issue blaster rifle. The blasts of these rifles have the impact force equivalent that of a normal bullet, but given that these blast bolts are super hot, they can easily melt through metal protection armor that the Germans are equipped with. Now moving on to the German soldier, who is equipped with standard metal-based body armor, which is highly unlikely to grant protection against blaster fire. However, the body armor is a darker shade, making these troops blend more into the environment, unlike the Stormtroopers. They are also armed with an assault rifle, or as in Star Wars terms, a slug thrower. While the bullets of these rifles may not be as powerful as blaster bolts, they have a much higher rate of fire. Even if these bullets are not strong enough to pierce Stormtrooper armor, the sheer blunt force caused by the impacts of bullets could be enough to kill a Stormtrooper by inflicting blunt force trauma and internal bleeding. Furthermore, there are also several specializations of the German soldier, depending on the level of training they receive and where they are stationed. Lastly, super soldiers are beefed-up versions of the regular German soldier. More heavily armored and able to wield deadlier weapons, they are a dangerous threat to regular Stormtroopers. Now let's move on to ground vehicles. The Empire mainly operates walkers like the AT-AT and the AT-ST as armored ground assault units. Other armored vehicles like the TX-225 tank, which was specially designed to maneuver and fight in urban areas, could see operational use. Many speeder bikes primarily used by scout troopers are also ideal for infantry units to quickly get from one place to another. As for Germans, they operate a more autonomous fleet of robotic units, some of which include both small and giant heavily armed robots, which are ideal for breaking through lightly defended enemy positions. German-manufactured drones, which are used for patrolling city streets high up from the sky, can be repurposed as reconnaissance drones, feeding valuable intel to German ground forces. Lastly, the Panzerhund is a highly agile and heavily armored hellbeast that can be used to maul down entire squads of stormtroopers. The mere sight of a Panzerhund could strike fear into stormtroopers, breaking down their formations in the process. Despite this, the AT-AT would still prove to be an unstoppable force against German robotic units thanks to its large size and heavily armored chassis. And given that the Germans are not used to seeing their enemies wield such large weapons, it could cause initial panic in their ranks and force them to retreat out of fear. Of course, this would remain temporary, and the AT-AT's fear factor would diminish over the course of the war. Only destructive artillery strikes and German air support directed at the large walker's weak points would be able to take it down. Speaking of the air, the Empire's mainline fighter is the TIE Fighter. It performs its best in space battles but is still able to operate in atmospheric pressures. There are also several specializations of the TIE Fighter, like the TIE Bomber used for bombing, and other fighter designs that feature more agility and weaponry. There are also other aircraft, which are mainly used for transporting troops and equipment. The Germans also have their mainline fighter, which is the Horten fighter, a wing-design aircraft. Both the Horten and TIE Fighter feature similar capabilities, with their primary way of engagement being dogfights. But the Horten is not able to exit planetary atmospheres unlike the TIE fighter. The Germans, however, have Project Whisper, specially developed stealth helicopters that are quiet in flight and do not show up on enemy radar, which can be ideally used for espionage or sabotage missions behind enemy lines. Finally, there are the superweapons. I will briefly list out the superweapons that the Germans have developed, but if you want a more detailed breakdown of these superweapons, I highly recommend watching my video on these superweapons. Anyways, the Germans have the Ausmerzer, Eva's hammer, the London Monitor, and the Sun Gun. These weapons have great applications on the ground but would pale in comparison to what the Galactic Empire has, which is their Imperial Navy consisting of Star Destroyers. Star Destroyers are large space vessels acting as basically mobile military bases for the Empire. Each Star Destroyer can house a huge amount of stormtroopers and equipment for a planetary invasion. Star Destroyers are able to also conduct orbital bombardments of worlds, and given that Germany mainly flies saucers in space, they would be helpless. The only way Germany could take down a Star Destroyer is by going nuclear. Even then, it would possibly require multiple nuclear strikes. Before the Star Destroyer's deflector shields would be disabled from absorbing the energy of these nukes and be vulnerable. Combine this with the support ships that usually accompany a Star Destroyer, Germany would have a really hard time. Also, if the Empire really wanted to, they could just use the Death Star to blow up the Earth, but for the sake of this scenario, I will be excluding it. However, there is one ace that Germany can play, and that is Death's Head, the man responsible for Germany's rapid technological development. If not immediately killed, Death's Head has the possibility to once again turn the tide of the war like he did during World War II. The Germans also have a doomsday device that would make the Earth slowly uninhabitable if their regime were to ever fall, but I will explain that caveat at the end of the video. So with the militaries compared, I present to you my scenario of an Imperial invasion of Earth. A quick disclaimer, this scenario is not supposed to be ultra-realistic. So without further ado, let me cook. It is like any other day in the Greater German Reich. Freedom of speech is suppressed, people are brainwashed under German rule, political dissidents are constantly persecuted, resistance members are being hunted, and Death's Head is developing miracles of technology. Just as it seemed like any other day for Germany, a fleet of Star Destroyers along with support ships seemingly appeared out of nowhere. The lunar base's defense systems on the moon immediately detected the large vessels and notified the German High Command of these revelations. However, before the moon base could even mount any form of response, it is destroyed in an orbital bombardment by one of the Star Destroyers. As High Command lost contact with the lunar base, they knew that these unknown forces had not come in peace. The Sun Gun, which was just innocently floating around in Earth's orbit, would also get obliterated by the Star Destroyer fleet. One of the Star Destroyers establishes radio contact with a German base on Earth. They introduce themselves as part of the Galactic Empire and demand the immediate unconditional surrender of the planet, or it will face the might of the Empire. As you can imagine, the Germans laugh at this request and tell the Star Destroyer to go screw themselves. The Star Destroyers, in the meantime, begin prepping their forces to invade Earth. The Empire's primary objective was to secure samples of Da'at Yichud technology, so orbital bombardments were strictly off-limits to avoid any unnecessary damage to Da'at Yichud vaults. The Empire had assessed the strategic value and defensive capabilities of every region on Earth in order to decide where their invading force would land. Asia was a death trap for the Empire's landing force due to the thousands of powerful flak cannons installed on the Great Wall of China. North America was of little strategic military value to both the Empire and Germany, so the Empire decided to invade the heart of the Reich, Berlin. Thousands of TIE fighters, troop transport ships, and ships transporting walkers and other military vehicles begin departing from the Star Destroyers and descending upon the capital. The German military scrambles an equal number of both Horten fighters and reinforcements to their capital to defend it. TIE and Horten fighters, piloted by the finest of both sides, begin engaging in dogfights, turning the sky into a hellish nightmare above the city. The ground did not fare any better. As much as German anti-air was able to shoot down Imperial ships, so did an equal amount of them were able to land. Both small and large walkers roamed and ravaged the streets of the city as it turned into a war zone resembling that of Stalingrad. German troops were used to large war machines, but they have never seen one being wielded by the enemy like the AT-AT. The sight of these walkers made German troops panic and frantically retreat from city blocks. Stormtroopers would also be in the same boat as the Germans. Panzerhunds were released to roam the streets of the city, and any unfortunate squad of stormtroopers that stumbled upon them and weren't able to escape were brutally mauled. The Ausmerzer is recalled from its patrols of North America to assist in the siege of Berlin by acting as a resupply point for Horten fighters. Some wreckage of Imperial tech like TIE fighters and walkers are secretly transported to Death's Head compound, where Death's Head analyzes it, and being the mad genius he is, begins reverse engineering it to give Germany a more even edge against the Empire. Over in Berlin, despite the Wehrmacht's best efforts, the city is ultimately lost to the overwhelming amount of Imperial forces that are being poured in from the Star Destroyers 3 days after the initial invasion. Both sides have also learned to counter each other's weapons and exploit any weaknesses they might have. As walkers start entering the countryside of Germany, they lose their effectiveness very quickly, as their large size in the open area makes them an easy target for German air support and heavy artillery. Advancing Imperial battalions are constantly ambushed by camouflaged German troops in forests, and their equipment stolen from dead soldiers for the Germans to analyze and adapt to it. Imperial troops in the meantime also find what they have sought after: documents regarding Da'at Yichud technology. They find locations of Da'at Yichud repositories and research centers, primarily the London Nautica. Some traces of this technology found in Berlin are transported to a Star Destroyer in Earth's orbit, as Imperial ground forces begin preparing for an assault on the London Nautica. Death's Head during this time is able to engineer the first iteration of Horten fighters that are able to travel in space while also being much cheaper to produce than the flying saucers the Germans have thus used to travel in space. In London, the Empire has launched another attack in an attempt to capture the London Nautica and extract valuable information and technology regarding the Da'at Yichud. Imperial troops are able to overwhelm the on-site German security and begin extracting the technology the facility holds. The Germans quickly catch on to this, and an order is given to the London Monitor to level the Nautica. It uses all of its firepower to destroy the base of the facility, making it collapse and killing any Imperial troops in or near the building. Despite this, the Empire was still able to get some valuable information out of the facility and transport it to a Star Destroyer. The Star Destroyer, now with a sufficient amount of this technology, enters hyperspace to bring this tech to an Imperial military research facility. Now that the Empire knows has already sent a sample of Da'at Yichud technology away for analysis, and they know where the location of these other research facilities and vaults are, they get more hands-off and begin a campaign of orbital bombardments on key military installations, making sure not to target the ones that hold precious Da'at Yichud technology. Military bases and other strategic locations like the Great Wall of China, Gibraltar Bridge, Death's Head compound are obliterated, disrupting German supply lines and paving way for rapid gains of ground for Imperial forces. Death's Head, however, had long gone to another secret facility to continue his development of new weapons without the worry of orbital bombardment. Sometime after, a Star Destroyer enters Earth's atmosphere to assist Imperial forces to take the city of Hamburg. German troops yet again see a gigantic ship floating in the sky, being much bigger than any Zeppelin they have seen. Just as German troops were abandoning the city, and all hope seemed lost to them, Eva's hammer, which had been patiently waiting near the coast, surfaces from the sea, points its nuclear cannon at the direction of the Star Destroyer and shoots. The warhead reached its target and detonated, destroying much of the city and the Imperial forces occupying it. However, the Star Destroyer's deflector shields had absorbed much of the blast, leaving the ship unharmed but vulnerable as the shields were disabled for the time being. Surviving German troops still saw that the Star Destroyer was still operational and ordered Eva's hammer to shoot again. Just as the Star Destroyer was ready to fly up from Hamburg, a second nuke landed on the hull of the ship, shredding it apart and making it fall into the already devastated city. The Star Destroyer fleet is shocked to learn of this event and continue intensifying their orbital bombardment, but it is cut short as a swarm of spaceflight-capable Horten fighters developed by Death's Head, some even carrying a nuclear payload, are inbound for the Star Destroyer fleet. A massive space battle ensues as Horten fighters begin releasing their nuclear payloads beneath the Star Destroyer's most vulnerable area, the underside. One by one, captains see as their fellow Star Destroyers are slowly torn to pieces from the resulting nuclear blasts. An immediate order is given to Imperial ground forces to retreat to the Star Destroyers. Stormtroopers are loaded onto transport ships, but due to the frantic situation, some are left behind. The remaining Star Destroyer fleet enters hyperspace and leaves the solar system. In the aftermath of this invasion, the German Reich is left devastated. Many territories begin revolting against the regime as Germany starts losing control all over the world, just as it seems that the reign of Germany is coming to an end. Death's Head was busy analyzing the remnants of the Star Destroyer in Hamburg, as well as other technologies left behind by the Empire. He understands the brilliance of these designs and introduces them to his new line of superweapons, which are derived from both Da'at Yichud and Imperial technology. In the following months, the German Reich quells any remaining resistance as they begin grasping the concept of hyperspace. The Empire, meanwhile, was able to study Da'at Yichud technology they had stolen from multiple German research facilities on Earth and also begin implementing drastically improved versions of their current military weapons, as well as creating new tech that further solidifies their rule over the galaxy. However, the Empire's secondary objective of conquering Earth had failed, and they planned to one day come back and finish the job. In the meantime, Germany had begun rebuilding itself and also began constructing its own fleet of spaceships, equipped with hyperspace technology thanks to the efforts of Death's Head. So that is basically how things would go down in my opinion. Of course, I nudged certain things into place to make it a more fair fight for the Germans, because if the Empire really wanted to, they could orbital bombard Germany into submission and still get some samples of surviving Da'at Yichud tech. However, occupation of Earth would prove to be a nightmare for the Empire, as the Empire has to deal with both remaining German loyalists and other resistance forces, making Earth a perpetual war zone. Even if the Empire was able to quell all resistance, the activation of the Doomsday device upon the fall of the German Empire or the death of Mustache Man would make Earth slowly uninhabitable. This is just my opinion. So I would like to know what you guys think why the Empire would invade the German Reich and what would be the eventual outcome, so let me know down in the comments. Also, if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this in the future. Lastly, if you would like to further support me and the creation of my videos, you can buy me a coffee. Link is in the description. Any donation, no matter the size, is much appreciated by me. Anyways, that's it. See you next time.